All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today we're going to be part 2 of reproduction, and it's all about the female reproductive system. This is just strictly going to outline the structure and function, and also the development of the egg, which is oogenesis. We're not going to get into the hormone regulation today because it's going to be quite complicated, and I think it'll just be a little bit easier to treat as a separate video altogether. All right, so you guys should have your notes in front of you. First little slide here that we're looking at, just a general overview of the female reproductive parts. You don't have to write anything down now just because we're going to get into it a little bit more in a few slides, but just to follow along. Here's where the eggs are actually going to start to be produced. So here are the ovaries. This is the fimbriae, and what happens is the eggs are released and they kind of get flicked down the fallopian tubes, also called the oviduct, and into the uterus. And then along the side here is your endometrium. This is the area that tends to thicken while your cycle is going along, and then eventually it sheds, which causes menstruation. And then it comes down through the cervix and then out the vagina. So the next one we're looking at is oogenesis. And the first part, this is all about the egg development. So this is the development of the ova. And we're looking for the singular, which is ovum. So for us, ovum and egg can pretty much be used interchangeably. So when we're talking about the ovum movement, you can also say the egg. When we're looking at the female birth, all the births are going to have all of the ova already, but they're going to be, so at birth, all ova are there, but they're immature. And then during puberty, approximately 1 per month is going to mature. Okay, so looking on, so here's a visual of what oogenesis looks like. So this is the ovary. And these are just freeze-framed pictures on each different part of the development. It's not like it actually cycles and moves from one spot to the next. So we're going to start off with the primary oocyte, which just means the beginning of an egg. It's within a follicle. So the follicle is what surrounds the oocyte, or the premature egg. And what happens is it starts growing and developing within this follicle. And then finally, it's going to get to this certain maturity level, which is called our secondary oocyte. And what happens is it actually, we'll call this a Graafian follicle. And you don't have to necessarily write that down because it's coming up next. And then right here, this is where ovulation occurs. So this is where the follicle bursts, and it sends this secondary oocyte out. Sorry, that would be this. And then all that's left is this leftover reproductive tissue called the corpus luteum, and we'll talk about what that does in a minute. So here again is the steps. Oops. So we're looking at again, the oocyte is the immature ovum, which is the egg. And then what surrounds is called the follicle. So this follicle surrounds it. So it contains the oocyte. And it matures into this one called the Graafian AA follicle. And once it's mature, which also means the egg is going to mature, it releases it. And so that releasing of the egg is called ovulation. Ovulation. So this is the bursting of the follicle, which releases, I can't spell today, or ever, releases ovum. So all of these processes are going to be regulated by hormones, and we'll talk about those hormones next time. So oogenesis continued. So we're looking at when that ovary releases the ovum, it's going to be directed down the oviduct, which we also call the fallopian tubes. And it gets kind of undulated through this by the fimbriae. Oops, still not spelling right. Fimbriae. So they kind of look like these little feather-like projections, and it kind of just like wafts it, undulates it down into the fallopian tube. In the actual fallopian tube over the oviduct, this is just like the hallway where you're going to be going through before you get into the uterus, but this is actually where fertilization occurs. Fertilization occurs here. So this is where the sperm and the egg meet. We'll get into that a little bit more next day as well. And cilia in the oviduct sweeps the ovum towards the uterus, and this takes usually around 4 to 5 days. And then, like I said, the remaining tissue after that ovum is released is called the corpus luteum, and we'll get into that a ton next day. So the remaining follicle tissue, it's called the corpus luteum. All right, and then just the last couple here, just some structures. We've talked about these ones a little bit already, but we have our womb, which is the uterus. It's very thick-walled. This is where implantation is going to occur, and it keeps getting thicker and thicker as the cycles go along because of certain hormones. We have something called the myometrium, and myo means muscle, so this is the muscle layer. Okay, so the myometrium is this muscle layer here on each side. We also have the endometrium, which is the one that we're going to be talking about the most, and this is this other. Change some colors here. So this is the inner layer, and this is what gets thickened because it needs to be thick in order for implantation to occur. So this is where the thickening occurs. That's a terrible color pen. And then finally we have the cervix, and all this is the opening right here from the vagina into the uterus. Okay, finishing off with the last bit of anatomy. It's a in-your-face visual. We have the cervix, which we just talked about. All of the vaginal cavity is lined with mucus. We call them mucosal cells. Let's get a different color pen. Okay, which is used as a lubricant. We also call this the birth canal for obvious reasons. It's where the offspring is going to come out. We have the clitoris, or the clitoris. So this is then the anterior or the frontal end. And it's pretty much just anterior end of the labia, which is just folds of skin that surrounds the opening. And as you guys may know, clitoris is for stimulation. And all of these are going to swell. Clitoris, labia, and the vagina all swell due to sexual arousal. Sure is a lot easier on video here to keep a straight face in front of you guys. Okay, so finishing off, this is what you need to know in order to actually know that you know it, know what all of these are, be able to identify them, know the functions, and then also be able to describe the process of oogenesis. So if you have any questions or comments, please write them down and we'll do some discussions next day. So thanks so much and have a wonderful night. Or if it's morning, right before class. We'll